Today, Model 3 modifications begin. Here's the look of the Model 3 with the standard wheels. Today we're installing 20-inch wheels. Now, the standard wheels on the Model 3 are 18-inch diameter, and you can see some rim scarring there. I'll get to that in a little bit, but one problem with the stock wheels is that the rim sticks out a little bit beyond the sidewall of the tire. But tires have an interesting sizing system. You'll notice here 235, 45 are 18, and then there are other specifications for the tire that I'll get into in a little bit. 235 is the millimeter width of the tire, so that tells you the tread width across the face of the tread. So 235 millimeters wide. Now this is sidewall height, this 45 number, but that doesn't mean 45 millimeters high. That is 45% of the 235 millimeters. So it gets a little bit confusing. 235 millimeters wide, 45% of that 235 millimeter width is the sidewall height, and 18 is the wheel diameter. So you've got 18-inch wheel diameter, and that's what the 18 is. So it's actually a kind of a dumb numbering method if you think about it. You have millimeters, percent, and inches. 235 millimeter wide, 45% of the width in height, and then 18 inches in rim diameter. So that's the numbering method for the tires. Then you've got a tread wear rating, which in this case is a 500, and that I've seen, the highest I've seen on one of my cars that I currently own is our Honda. It has a 560 tread wear rating, but 500 is considered extremely high. Most all-season or green tires have that. In fact, this is a Michelin green. Michelin makes their green line of tires, their high efficiency tires. And so here's the tread wear rating on this tire. It is 500. Most tread wear ratings are anywhere from the low 100s up to about 500. Again, 560 is the tread wear rating that's on our Honda. That's the highest I've seen. Traction is an A. You can have double A or triple A, but this tire traction is an A. Temperature is an A. That's a temperature rating for what the tire will, what the normal operating temperature of the tire is. Now, here on the sidewall, you have the measurement again, 235, 45, R18. And then 98W, that is the weight bearing rating of the tire. And that's something that's very important. I'll get to that when I talk about the aftermarket wheels that I got. This says extra load. The Model 3 is a very heavy car. It's 3,800 pounds. And so it's kind of critical that you have a tire that has an extra load bearing capacity. That, I believe, is sidewall strength and PSI rating that gives you that extra load. And then these are an acoustic tire, which means that they're designed to run more quietly on the pavement. So anyway, let's go take a look at the aftermarket wheels and tires that I got. All right, so there they are in all their glory. And let's see here, I'll show you one of the boxes. This is one of the boxes that it came in. These are Savini brand SVF wheels. Again, these are Savini brand SVF2 style wheels, and they are, let's see here, we'll get you the SV and then MFT. That's their advertisement for the way they form the wheels. We can get into that later. But the standard wheels on the Model 3 are 18-inch diameter and 8.5 inches in width. So again, standard wheels are 18-inch diameter, 8.5-inch width. These are 20-inch diameter wheels, and if you look close, you'll notice that they're different in width. The front wheels are the standard 8.5-inch wide wheels, and the rears are 10-inch wide. Now, I did that because others that have installed aftermarket wheels and tires have stated that you can put 10-inch wide tire or rims on the rear and they fit just fine. And being a rear-wheel drive car, traction is very important on the rear. And you can see these are very wide tires. And getting back to the measurement, as I was showing you on the stock wheels, let's see. The rears are 275/30 ZR20. So again, 275 is the millimeter width across the face of the tire. 30 is 30% of the width of the tire in sidewall height, and 20 is the diameter of the wheel. So, and then we've got 97Y. That is that's the load rating, which is the same as the W on the other tire. So 97Y is high load rating, and it actually even says here extra load. So these are a very high load rated tire. Now, this particular tire is a Michelin brand Pilot Sport AS 3 Plus. Now, Pilot Sports are the tires that many people put on their 20-inch wheels in their Model 3s. Where these differ, however, is in the AS. AS is all season. And when I looked, tires that come in this 275, tires that come in this 275/30 ZR20 for the rear, and then the front is 235/35 ZR20. Tires that come in this size are typically for summer use. They're high performance tires, and number one, they are inefficient. The rolling resistance is very high. Number two, most tires in this size, or pretty much all tires except these, are not only low roll or high rolling resistance tires, but the tread wear is very high. Their tread wear rating is typically 140 to 180, such as some of the super high-end tires that for track use and that. And I hunted, and these are the only tires I think anyone makes at all. You guys in the comments section can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe these are the only tires with a high tread wear rating and an all-season compound that come in these sizes. The only ones, and I looked. On top of that, I had to talk to 4 different dealers to order me these tires. For Northern Illinois, Ford is the primary distributor for Michelin tires. I called 4 different Ford dealerships, all of which pretty much refused to even look the tires up. I gave them the tire size, told them they're Pilot Sport AS 3 Plus, and they said, oh, they're not in our system, they're not available. And I said, look, I've got Michelin's website open right now. I can order them from Michelin and have them drop shipped. But I'd rather, you guys are going to mount and balance them, I'd rather have you guys order them for me, make a couple $100 on them, do the mounting and balancing for me. They refused to do it. I had to talk to their distributor. One of the Ford dealerships around here gave me their distributor's phone number, the name of the person to ask for. I had to talk to their distributor to make sure that, yes, they are available, and then call Ford dealership back. And again, I went through 4 different dealerships, and I finally called one back and said, look, talk to Patrick at TCI. Here's their phone number. They're like, who's that? I said, that's your supply. Don't tell me you don't know who this is. It was a big deal. And when I talked to the distributor, they said, well, since these tires had never been sold through that dealership, they weren't in their system. It was a nightmare getting these tires. So they finally ordered the tires for me, got them in, and lo and behold, installed the rear tires on the front rims and vice versa. So they said, oh, we're not used to installing differential width tires and wheels. We're used to them being all the same size, which I think is a crock. They just screwed up. What a nightmare. So when all is said and done, they switched them, and now we're all good. But again, it was a very difficult proposition. And they asked me, you know, why are these particular tires so important to you? And I told them, they are the only tires in this size range with a very high tread wear rating. On these, they happen to be a 500 tread wear rating, just like the stock tires in the Model 3. So these should last a good 80,000 miles or more, unless I'm too hard on them. But they're a high tread wear rating. They're all season, so they'll work well in the rain, and they happen to be the right low profile size. What a pain in the neck. But anyway, aside from that, it was a lot of the research that was done on these was related to the fact that I went from this narrower 8.5 inch width, these again are the fronts, and then 10 inch wide in the rear, going to 10 inch wide rear wheels. There was a problem there, and that is that being that 45 that second number in the tire measurement is not a height measurement, it's an aspect ratio, it's a percentage of the width is the height. That becomes difficult because when you go from an 18-inch diameter wheel, which are the stock wheels, to 20-inch, all of a sudden that aspect ratio has to change and become lower profile in order to make the entire outside diameter of the tire correct. And you want to be within 1 or 2% of factory for a bunch of reasons. But and on top of that, that's bad enough when you're dealing with the same 8.5-inch wide wheel. You just deal with, okay, you've got a different diameter rim, so you change the aspect ratio to kind of compensate. However, in my case, since I went with 10-inch wide rear wheels, the width changed, which means it's not a 235 millimeter wide tire like the front is, and like the stock tires on the Model 3 are. It's a 275, which changed this aspect ratio again. So you'll notice these are 235/35, the fronts. The rears are 275/30. That's because, again, that 30 is not a measurement, it's a percentage. So when the tire got wider, suddenly it got taller, so I had to change the percentage down. Very complicated and confusing. I had to learn all of this on the fly, and so it was a kind of a pain in the neck. On top of all that, there's this lug spacing, and I've heard it called bolt circle diameter. I've just heard it called lug spacing. If you just shop for Tesla wheels, you may find that they want to sell you Model S wheels, and this measurement on a Model S is 120 millimeters. On a Model 3, it's 114.3 millimeters. So that measurement is different on a Model 3 than it is on a Model S. I actually had to have these wheels custom drilled for my application. Normally they would be drilled for a Model S, which is a larger, the lug holes would be further out. So Model 3, again, is 114.3 millimeters lug spacing. On top of that, you've got TPMS sensors. The TPMS sensors are an electronic valve stem. I should have gotten some pictures of this before they were installed, but there's a small electronic circuit board with a pressure transducer mounted to the stem inside the wheel. And in order to have the tire pressure monitoring work in the car, you have to have the correct TPMS sensors. In researching those TPMS sensors, I found that each car uses different megahertz frequency for communicating with the car's computers. And with a Tesla, it's 433 megahertz. So they're very specific, at least for the Model 3 anyway, 433 megahertz. So Tesla wanted $250 for their TPMS sensors. I found Huff brand TPMS sensors online for $169, ordered them. After I got them, I found out that they have to be programmed specifically for each car. So I called and talked to them and said, I have a Model 3, not a Model S, and they said, yeah, that's good because we programmed these for a Model 3. So you need 433 megahertz TPMS sensors programmed for the Model 3. You need to make sure you've got the right width and diameter of wheels, the right width and aspect ratio and diameter tires with the right tire tread compound. You have to make sure that the wheel offset, which is the face of the hub versus the inside edge of the tire, has to be correct. You have to have the bore spacing for the lugs correct. This was a big task for me. In doing a bunch of research on various forums and chat rooms, I could find a portion of the information on one discussion thread, but that was it. Then I'd have to hunt around. Ooh, I could find another bit of information. One guy mentioned the lug spacing. Another guy mentioned that, yes, 10-inch wide wheels fit. Another guy mentioned the tire sizes that he used to get closest to the stock outside diameter tires. But that was it. Another guy, I mean, it was just ridiculous, all the reading. I've spent the last 2 months, probably 10 minutes a day, but, you know, still the last couple months reading up on this and becoming knowledgeable on it. Very, very time consuming. So anyway, next I'll go to lug nut size and we'll start to install them. So what you would do to go into the owner's manual, hit service, owner's manual, and this brings up some selections. So first we'll choose owner's manual, and if you look down you'll see maintenance. Tap on maintenance. First we'll look at jacking and lifting. Now they mention here the jacking procedure. Follow the steps below. Position the Model 3 centrally between lift posts. Now this is for a 4-post lift, but if you look closely here, you can jack up the car. If you look at the red section, there's these tiny little gray sections, these tiny little 4 gray dots. Those are the lifting points under the car. So that's where you would jack the car up from. Kind of interesting, they give you an undercarriage view of the aero panels under the car. But anyway, that's what the jack points look like. That's where you jack the car up. So let's see here. Now we'll look at tire care and maintenance. Tire care and maintenance, maintaining tire pressures. We'll lift through here, and so if you click on TPMS malfunction, the TPMS indicator, it explains a number of different items, but here note, if a tire has been replaced or repaired using a different tire sealant, you can damage the TPMS sensors. That's pretty important. You don't want to use tire sealant on a Tesla. And so let's see here, automatic resetting of TPMS sensors. So I highly recommend reading through this entire section, but we won't do that on the video. So after replacing one or more wheels, but not after replacing a tire or rotating the wheels, the TPMS sensors are reset to ensure tire pressure warnings are accurate. TPMS sensors reset automatically after driving over 15 miles per hour for longer than 10 minutes. So after replacing a wheel, false tire pressure warnings may display before you've driven 15 miles an hour for longer than 10 minutes. So the car is supposed to automatically reprogram itself to the new TPMS sensor. All right, step one on replacing wheels is to first, while the car is sitting on the ground, make sure you crack all 5 lug nuts loose, which is a matter of putting the lug wrench on and initially giving them a turn. You do that because once the wheel is off the ground, the wheel will want to rotate as you're moving the lug wrench. So you want to leave the weight down with the parking brake on. I also have a wood block under the front wheel, just as an added precaution that the car doesn't roll. So you put the lug wrench on each wheel, you give each lug nut a turn. I already cracked these a tiny bit loose to make sure they would turn for you guys on camera. So once you've turned all 5 lug nuts a little bit, now you can jack the car up and remove the wheel. And on the screen in the car, they show where the lift points are underneath each corner of the car to jack it up. Then you go ahead and remove all the lug. There's the tire and wheel removed. Go ahead and give you guys a view of the inside the wheel well. So you can see the shock, the suspension spring. This is not a strut suspension. It's actually a double wishbone suspension. So much better quality, or well, it's a multi-link suspension, not double wishbone, but it's not a McPherson strut. Much better suspension system. So here's the 4-link, upper link, and there is one of the suspension arms, and we've got the sway bar and the half shaft here and the shock. I've got lowering springs on order for the car, so those will be replaced here soon. Brake rotor and caliper. So here's the brake line. There's where the shock mounts. So very well thought out system. I'm going to stick the camera inside so you can see the drive unit. Let me straighten this out here. So there's the inverter side of the drive unit. Pretty cool. Camera back out, and we'll get to installing one of the new wheels. Ooh, pretty. So let's look at the difference between the two, between the factory wheel so there's the difference in tread, pattern, and width. The overall ratio, final drive ratio, is about the same because the height of the wheels is identical, but you'll notice far greater width on the new tires, as well as greater tire depth, tread depth I should say, and yet the rim diameter is drastically different. So the look on the car will be quite a bit different, and the ride quality, the cornering should improve. It'll have a little bit stiffer ride quality, but should look fantastic. Now when I purchased these wheels, they sent out a complete new set of black lug nuts to match the wheels. There are also decorative center caps that will go on, but the lug wrench doesn't fit through the center caps, so you must remove them. So, but these white lugs will go on in place, and these are not 21 millimeter as the original, these are 19. So I'll be using a 19 millimeter lug wrench to snug these down. They put them all in separate bags here, so we'll remove all of those. So let's go ahead and install the wheels. There's one other thing that you're going to have to be aware of, and that is that on each of these there's a brake disc sort of retention bolt right here that the original wheels have a recess for, but the aftermarket ones don't. This is not needed. It's merely an assembly item so that when the rotors are put on, they don't hang loose. They are held to the hub, and so when the wheel is on, the rotor's captured anyway. Most cars don't use this, but there is one here, so we're going to need to remove that. Again, it's a totally normal thing. It's not a big deal. This happens to be 10 millimeters, and it's actually installed quite loosely, so you remove that. Set that aside. Let's go ahead and put the wheel on. Oh, before I get started with that, there are holes, recessed holes here for the lug nuts, and my T-handled lug wrench, although it does have a 19 millimeter socket on it for the new lugs that are 19 millimeters, it will not fit in the counterboard hole. So I'm using a breaker bar with an impact socket on it because that impact socket fits in this recessed hole. Also, I do prefer a long breaker bar rather than just a normal T-handled lug wrench like I was using to take the stock wheels off, because you can get a lot better, a lot more force out of this than you can out of a standard lug wrench. So go ahead and install the wheel. Now I'm going to give each lug a light snugging, just to make sure that they are firmly seated but not snugged all the way down, because as you remember, the weight has to be on the wheel to really put a lot of torque onto the lugs. So I'm going to go over and lower the jack. Nice and slow. Remove the jack. Now I can finish snugging down the lugs. You want to snug them in a crisscross pattern, like you're drawing a star on a piece of paper. It spreads the load more evenly than if you were to torque them around in a circle. So I typically will torque one, then the other, kind of go in a bit of a star pattern. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you don't necessarily want to torque around in a circle. It just spreads the load a little bit better if you torque them properly. So one down, now I just have to repeat that 3 more times. All right, we're putting the front wheel on now. There's the wheel, beautiful as it is. So here's the front end. You can see that bolt that we're going to have to remove again, that 10mm bolt. Here's the brake caliper. Good opportunity to see inside here. The suspension arm, really, really nice aluminum suspension arm. This is a double wishbone suspension. Here's the shock and spring. Now this appears to be a strut, but it's actually not. This is not a McPherson strut suspension system. This is a double wishbone. Here's your upper control arm, upper wishbone. Here you've got the upright, and you've got the lower wishbone. So again, double wishbone suspension. We'll get some view inside there. This is just a rear-wheel drive car, so there's no drive unit. That's where the drive unit would sit if it were an all-wheel drive unit. So there we got the brake line. Again, there's the suspension. You've got this aluminum support here. Here you've got the steering tie rod and the sway bar link going down to the sway bar itself. Steel subframe inside of the wheel well. So you can see here there's a weight just zip tied to the upper suspension arm. There's some conjecture about that. Some people are postulating that it might be some kind of a vibration suppressor. It's hard to say. This is a pressed steel arm that has been dipped in plastic, and it's got plastic around it and plastic support ribs. Actually very well designed, nice sealed ball links. So yeah, that is the front end assembly with the wheel removed. So go ahead and put the wheel on now. All right, well, got the tires installed and been driving it around. The car sensed the new wheel size, so this icon came on. So let's hit reset, see how that goes. So it senses differential wheel pressure, tire pressures. So tire pressure sensors have been reset successfully. Excellent. So I'm going to have to air up the tires to the proper pressure, but good deal. The car senses the tire pressure properly. That's awesome. The tire pressure monitoring system has picked up the new TPMS sensors, so that's good. I'm listed as 46 PSI on the left front, 45 for all the other 3, and I can tell you that right off the bat, the ride quality, people complain that going with low profile tires makes the ride rougher. The way I would describe it is you can feel the road better. You can feel what the contact patches are doing much better with these than you can with the 18s. And the ride is not rougher, but it communicates more from the road up through the steering wheel and through the seat. I'm on a rough road right now, but as it smooths out, it is, the car drives exactly the same with a few exceptions. As I mentioned, there's more road feel coming through. The turn-in is much better. The the car, there's very little sidewall roll on these low profile tires, so the turn-in is much improved. And not that the turn-in was bad before, but now it is much improved. And I can tell you that the 0 to 60 acceleration is exactly the same, 5.00 seconds. I honestly think that it's electronically, well, limited, but electronically regulated at that time. I can tell you, however, that exiting a corner, when you're mid-corner and you floor it, it will pull harder through the corner because I've got wider tires at the rear, and the traction control doesn't need to battle to keep traction around the corner because I got wider tires. So I can throttle it harder out of corners than I could before. Again, the turn-in is better, the road feel is better. It definitely corners harder. I would say the only real negative to it is there is some road noise that gets communicated through. So if I turn the HVAC system off, I definitely can hear road noise. I don't know if it's coming through on the video or not, but there definitely is tire tread noise on the pavement. It's not bad, but it is there. And I'll say this, that turning on the HVAC system, even at I'd say about 6 on the fan speed, really dampens it out. Up at 7 fan speed, you can't hear the road noise at all anymore. If you turn the radio on at all, you can't hear the road noise. If you crack the window at all, you can't hear the road noise. So it's not bad, but it is there. And I know that Tesla installs foam on the Tesla installs foam inside the tires to quiet them down, and that, I believe that foam really does a whole lot more than people may realize. So these do have a more aggressive tread pattern, deeper tread depth than the original tires, so that's going to add some road noise as well. But it is, I love it. It looks wonderful. It drives really, really nice. Again, the cornering is just absolutely stellar at this point, and I couldn't be happier with it. So I will, I'll continue putting some miles on it and see how the efficiency is affected. Thing is, I'm liking the way it handles so much that it's going to be hard to get a good sense for efficiency, because I've been throttling it so hard, driving it so hard with these new tires, that it's going to be hard to get a sense of that. But I'm assuming that the efficiency will take a little bit of a hit because the tires are wider at the rear. The tread wear rating is exactly the same. It's 500, same on these tires as the originals, but they do have a deeper tread pattern, which tends to be more rolling resistance, and wider tires at the rear, again, more rolling resistance. And these wheels have zero effort put into them for aerodynamic efficiency. They're a sort of flat blade spoke design. So my guess is that I'm not going to be seeing the 185 to 190 watt hours per mile without HVAC. I'm probably going to be seeing more like 200 or 205 or something like that. That would be my guess. I hope not, but that would be my guess. Anyway, yes, I absolutely love it. The wheel and tire package has exceeded my expectations. So the next thing is installing lowering springs. I ordered 1-inch lowering springs and from T-Sportline. There are a number of manufacturers that make them. The one manufacturer is out of stock, and I didn't want any more than a 1-inch drop for a number of reasons. Some of the others were 1.5 inch drop, and so but 1 inch seems to be perfect. But anyway, so yes, absolutely wonderful addition to the car, and the modifications will continue. All right, so there they are installed. I must say, I really like the look of them. Ultimately, I think that Tesla does a disservice to to their customers by not offering nicer wheels. Honestly, I understand the aerodynamic wheel caps for these things are, you know, increase the efficiency, but I don't know. Honestly, I don't like the look of them. So, very happy with these. All right, one reason to lower the car isn't just for handling or to look cool being lowered, but because of the wheel well gap here. Now, these wheels haven't changed the wheel well gap, but when you have a taller sidewall tire, there's an optical effect that happens that makes the wheel arch gap look smaller than it is. So as you go to a lower profile tire, all of a sudden the wheel gap is a higher percentage of that height. So it ends up looking very large, even though it hasn't changed at all, but it's an optical effect. So when you lower the car down 1 inch, suddenly that wheel gap looks correct for these low profile tires. So that's one main reason to go ahead and lower the car down. And there's a good view of the tire ratings: 275, 30, ZR20, 97Y, that's your load rating, extra load. And one other thing I wanted to point out is that the stock tires they would hang inside the lip of the rim. So 2 of my 4 rims, stock rims, are scarred from being curbed. These tires actually hang out beyond the edge of the rim. So as most tires do, so you end up having the effect that the sidewall will scuff on a curb rather than the edge of the rim. So just another consideration for you guys.